Right now, you are probably sitting in a comfortable and secure building. The walls around you, the electricity and the roads visible from your window might make you feel how ordinary civilization is. But the real truth that will shake your mind is this. Humans existed for 290,000 years without any trace of permanent structures, fields, or cities, simply adapting to the rhythm of nature. For nearly 300,000 years, sleeping under the stars hanging in the night sky was the only way of life known to our ancestors. This constantly moving life was not a primitive desperation as commonly believed, but an enormous success story of achieving perfect harmony with nature. Our ancestors survived ice ages, showing magnificent adaptation to deserts and deep forests. They possessed an advanced language, created spectacular artworks on cave walls, and despite being biologically modern just like us, they did not build any permanent structures for thousands of years. That is, until 12,000 years ago, the day when everything changed in the blink of an eye. About 12,000 years ago, as if touched by an invisible hand, humans suddenly began to settle down, plant seeds, and construct massive stone temples. In just a few thousand years, gatherers transformed into farmers, small groups into towns, and ultimately into gigantic civilizations with writing and complex social structures. The greatest mystery that still makes archaeologists ponder today is this. Why did humans, who survived perfectly in nature for hundreds of thousands of years, suddenly experience this change? Some scientists attribute the cause of this change to the Earth entering a much milder and more stable climate period called the Holocene 11,600 years ago. Other researchers believe that the massive climate shift created by a comet crashing into Earth or exploding in the atmosphere 12,800 years ago forced humans to find entirely new ways. Ice cores in Greenland reveal the traces left by this colossal cosmic event with all its reality. Massive temple complexes like Gobekli Tepe in Turkey prove that this story is much deeper than we know. These structures show that before agriculture and settled life, a social revolution and a new form of organization were sprouting in the minds of humans. As the veil of mystery over the past is lifted, the emerging story turns into an extraordinary cinematic epic involving cosmic changes, mysterious temples, and humanity redefining its place in the universe. The pre-civilization life of our gatherer ancestors relied on a highly peaceful and relaxing balance, contrary to popular belief. Modern research has revealed that communities maintaining this lifestyle worked only between 15 to 20 hours a week. All their remaining time was dedicated to entirely peaceful activities such as socializing, telling stories, playing games, and artistic production. The dietary habits of the people in this era were much richer and more nutritious than many diets in the modern world. Depending on the season, they consumed 50 to 100 different food types such as plants, fruits, roots, and seeds. This incredible diversity protected them against deficiencies. Skeletal remains clearly show that these mobile people were much taller and healthier than the first agricultural societies. The social bonds our ancestors formed were as strong, deep, and admirable as their physical health. They lived in tightly knit groups consisting of 25 to 50 people, where children were raised collectively by the community, and knowledge was generously shared. The elderly and the sick were protected with great compassion, and it is proven by archaeological findings that even individuals with severe disabilities were kept alive peacefully for years. The world they lived in was a fascinating landscape that was colder than today, with lower sea levels and massive glaciers covering continents. This epic geography was a domain ruled by roaming herds of woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, and majestic creatures. Watching nature carefully, our ancestors had grasped the migration routes of these massive creatures and the rhythm of the seasons with a deep wisdom passed down from generation to generation. These people not only survived in nature, but also produced an enormous cultural wealth that leaves us in awe even today. The wall paintings created 36,000 years ago in a dim atmosphere in the Chauvet cave in France were on par with modern artists. The 40,000-year-old flutes made of bone reveal that they created magnificent works for the sake of music and art, possessing a deep aesthetic understanding. This perfectly functioning balance changed with the 200-year period called the Younger Dryas, when the world suddenly returned to harsher climate conditions. In this environment where forests and majestic animal species dwindled, finding new ways to adapt in order to survive became a necessity. The unpredictability of the climate pushed humans to develop different feeding strategies, leading to the birth of new forms of organization that would shape the destiny of humanity. Right in the middle of these changing conditions, in Gobekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, gatherers who did not even know how to make pottery accomplished a mind-boggling feat. They carved massive 20-ton T-shaped limestone pillars, flawlessly adorned with animals, out of rocks and built a circular temple. Gobekli Tepe proved to the whole world that the foundation of civilization was laid with the ability to gather around a common belief and purpose to establish a massive organization. The gathering of nomadic groups living in distant regions at these magnificent temples enabled social bonds to strengthen extraordinarily. During these periodic meetings, knowledge was shared, strong connections were established between distant groups, and they united around a common identity. The coming together of hundreds of people necessitated the more systematic gathering of wild grains around the temples, paving the way for the first calm steps towards agriculture. With the climate finally stabilizing, people in the Fertile Crescent region began their trials by planting wild wheat and barley from nature around their camp areas. As our ancestors, who observed nature carefully, selected and planted large-grained plants, these plants eventually became adapted to human hands. The same process worked for animals. As docile herd leaders were followed and protected, wild sheep and goats were domesticated, turning into loyal and peaceful partners of humans. This revolutionary calm change was not limited to a single region. A similar awakening occurred in at least 7 independent points across the world. Rice in China, corn and squash in Mesoamerica, and potatoes in the Andes began to be cultivated simultaneously by people thousands of kilometers apart from each other. The predictability of the seasons ensured that nature ceased to be a feared uncertainty and turned into a reliable partner where humans could make long-term plans. This new land-based way of life was initially a complex system that brought more working hours and the necessity of intense labor to humans. Sowing seeds and tending the fields required much more focus than gathering, and the single crop-based dietary model restricted the old diversity. However, the fact that agriculture produced more food in a smaller area led to the gradual growth of settled communities and created a new social cycle by requiring more hands to work in the fields. The surplus of products produced over the years enabled a new order where not everyone had to produce food directly. It led to the birth of specialists who made pottery, produced textiles, or studied the sky. This specialization laid the foundation for complex economic networks where people cooperated over the values they produced, and art and craft further developed. This new era, where not only necessary items but also objects of aesthetic value were produced, completely unleashed the creative potential of the human mind. The emergence of product storage and settled life made social relations even more detailed, leading to the construction of protective structures around villages. People had to develop new security organizations to protect this immense wealth they produced from external factors. Our system had begun to take shape, where abstract concepts and large solidarity networks guided human life, and more centralized and organized administrative forms where magnificent houses were built. With the emergence of glorious cities where the population reached tens of thousands, needs that required massive organization, such as the fair distribution of water and the management of produced food, arose. When administrators in large cities of Mesopotamia like Uruk encountered a system too complex to keep the products in warehouses in their mines, they created the first recording systems in history using clay symbols. The elegant invention of writing was not just a communication tool. It also became the greatest infrastructure for large organizations, architecture, and the permanent state mechanism. In a relatively short period of time in evolutionary terms, like just a few thousand years, an incredible transformation took place, stretching from small seasonal camps to permanent villages, from towns to gigantic states. This extraordinary and cinematic historical process is the greatest proof of how quickly, creatively, and flawlessly our species can adapt to changing conditions. Our ancestors, who were a humble part of nature for 290,000 years, took their place in the stage of history as the only species that transformed the world, left magnificent works, and shaped the future with this incredible adaptability they demonstrated.